We welcome Professor Aaron Demsky in our midst. He's born in America but transplanted to Israel and has come back numerous times. We're glad to have him here. He will provide some time for question and answers at the end of his presentation. We've invited John Covetness, who has known him through the years and has promised only to say the good things he knows about him. In fact, Professor Demsky says he doesn't really know him that well and know all the bad things yet anyway. But John, if you would come and introduce our special guest lecturer, please.
Aside from some of Professor Demsky's articles that I've read over the years, we actually didn't meet until last August when he invited me to participate in one of the sessions of the World Congress of Jewish Studies where I presented a paper on Hebrew names in the Book of Mormon. Professor Aaron Demsky is from the United States, originally born in New York. He immigrated to Israel with his family in 1965. He received a PhD at the Hebrew University in Jerusalem. Since 1968, he's been at Bar Ilan University in Ramat Gan, where he's a professor of biblical history. He is also director of the project for the study of Jewish names at the university. He is the head also of the Rivlin Institute for the History of the Land of Israel and has chaired a number of conferences over the years. He's a specialist in the history of the Hebrew language and Hebrew and Semitic epigraphy, that's ancient writings, if you will, but also is known for his studies of Jewish culture and history. He has participated in archaeological work as well at Tel Shiloh and at Tel Safi. Shiloh was the ancient site where the tabernacle was kept for a time, and Tel Safi is thought to be the city of Gath from which Goliath came. He is most known for his translation of the oldest Hebrew document known to date from a place called Isbet Sarteh. He is also known for the interpretation of one of the Tel Ekron inscriptions recently found. It was dedicated to an unknown Philistine goddess. He frequently lectures at universities, synagogues, and other venues in various countries, especially in the United States, Israel, and Europe. He's edited 4 books. He's published both scholarly and popular articles in a wide variety of books, journals, and magazines, including the Journal of the Ancient Near Eastern Society, the Israel Exploration Journal, Bible Review, and Biblical Archaeology Review. He's also a contributor to the
computer literate today, and it gives us an opportunity to look back into history and to see how literate were the ancients at different periods of time. I'm sure you're all familiar with the statement in the Quran that Muhammad addressed particularly Jewish people and Christian people that he met as Ahl al-Kitab, the people of the book. It's a very precise, interesting, and correct definition of those people who had a literary tradition, particularly a tradition of revelation that came forth in a book, which we can all appreciate. So the question is, how literate were the ancient Israelites? We do know that there's the Torah, we do know that there was the earliest revelation to Israel was in the form of tablets, of stone tablets, the Ten Commandments. But looking at the problem as a historian, particularly as a social historian, you have to see the broad view of who was literate in the ancient world, and particularly in Israel. Can we measure in any way literacy in the ancient world? Now, most sociologists say prior to the 19th century, 150 years ago, 200 years ago, with the Industrial Revolution and census taking. Only then can we have an objective form of determining, of measuring literacy. Prior to that, the medieval period, the early modern period, and going back further, there's no real objective or direct means of determining who is literate. So one of the problems that we'll be facing is there a methodology? Is there a means of how we can go back to the ancient world and determine who could read and write? But before we do that, we should make a few general statements about writing. Writing was invented 3100 BCE. See that? Is that clear? 3100 BCE. It takes us back some 5,000 years ago to ancient Iraq, Mesopotamia, actually ancient Sumer. And in Sumer, the civilization is organized, begins to be organized. A famous book by Samuel Noah Kramer, History Begins at Sumer. So if you're interested in the ancient world, it's always a good book, it's a good read. Even though it was written some 50 years ago, it's still very important to understand the beginnings of civilization, government, courts, schools, scribal classes. So all of that is reflected in ancient Sumer. But the big date for big move in writing was about 1700 BC. Now, the earliest forms of writing are logograms, are writing in signs that reflect either words or ideas, or writing a syllabic script. I'm sure you're all familiar with your travels around the world. Logogram and syllabic script is still in China today. The Japanese write in a syllabic script. So all of these were the common scripts of ancient Egypt and Mesopotamia, the Hittites, and all of those ancient peoples. Now what happened in 1700 BCE in the land of Canaan, somewhere between Lachish and Shechem and Gezer, in the heartland of the biblical world, a Canaanite scribe, who probably knew Egyptian, probably cuneiform from Mesopotamia, came upon the idea that perhaps there was an easier way of transcribing language in a visual form than the 600 signs or so of Mesopotamian cuneiform and hieroglyphics. And so he came up with this brilliant idea that if indeed writing visualizes language, then perhaps there is a smaller linguistic unit than the word or than the syllable. And he came up with this idea that perhaps he could analyze language into consonants. And so, looking at his own Semitic language, his own Canaanite language, began to analyze the words that he heard. And he wrote them down, or he at least lifted them, or repeated them, and so on down the line. He came up with some 25 to 30 consonants. His problem now was how do you put that into visual form? And what do you call those consonants? How do you teach it? In other words, not only think about it abstractly, but how do you get it across to a group? And so he devised the plan, and he's anonymous. I don't know what his name was, but I know that he was a Canaanite, and it was about 1700 BC because I have the archaeological documentation. And so what you see on the first page, that's actually marked number 3, the chart, is the chart of the alphabetic script. And if you look at the column 1, you see the consonants and Latin letters. Column 2, the names as we know them today. Those of you who study Hebrew know the names. However, some of those names are probably a bit late. They're not the original Canaanite names. And then column 3 gives us the signs as they appeared in 1500 BCE, very close to the invention of that alphabet. Now we see those signs are pictographic. Pictographic meaning that they look somewhat like pictures and not geometric as what is developed. So if you look at the first letter, Aleph, Well, Aleph means a bull, and so the picture that we know from 1500 is that of a bull's head. And it's very pictographic. And of course, what happens afterwards, it becomes stylized. So that a form like this, with the horns, after people begin writing, looks more like this, or like this, or like this. If they're writing from right to left, they're writing from left to right, or as that letter moves across the Mediterranean and moves to Greece, it just stands this way on the horns, and so you have Aleph and Alpha, and the letters begin to form. So if you look at number 4, column 4, 5, 6, these are early developments of the Hebrew and Canaanite alphabet. Sometimes I would say Canaanite, but the forms that are here are Hebrew. And then number 7 is the square Hebrew. Number 8 is the Greek letters that are more closer to number 4 in time. Probably the Greek letters we assume to have been adopted by the Greeks from the Phoenicians, probably between the 10th and 9th century. I think an early chronology for that borrowing. And of course, the letter names in column 9 reflect the old Canaanite names. The Greeks had borrowed not only the letter forms, but the names and probably methods of teaching the alphabet as well. And of course, the Latin alphabet is on number 10. So that if you look down at the letters, you see Bet, it means house, as in Beth Page, Beth El, and so on. It's the house. The earliest form, number 3, is a square or rectangle. Dalet is interesting because here again the name does not reflect the picture. A dalet is a door. It's also a rectangular form, but the earliest picture is that of a fish. So that in early Canaanite was probably called, fish, but out in Canaanite. Dag, right. So that earliest form was Dag. And then look what happens between 3 and 4. Now, since that picture form is more involved, there are too many lines going. Now, that's good for the first 100 years or so. But when this idea, the alphabet picks up, and then gets out to a lot of young people, so the tendency of the teachers would be, let's simplify this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 line figure, and let's make it just simply the tail. Let's cut off the tail. And so cutting off the tail, we forget about it. It's not a picture of a dog, of a fish anymore. This is a representation of the consonant D, and that's what we're interested in. So we have the geometric triangle, and this is now called Dalet, which means a door, which is a rectangle. But since we're not really talking about doors, we're talking about just the letter D, so we should not write a rectangle. In fact, if we do that, it's going to confuse our students with a bet, which is also rectangular or square. So what they do is they call it Dalet, write it as a triangle, and everybody reads it as a D. And of course, when it goes to Greece, the Greeks just pick up the name and call it Delta, or Deltos, right? And they have no idea that it has anything to do with the door or anything else. It's just the letter D. And so this is how, in simple form, how the alphabet develops. And of course, we could sit here and talk for a whole year, at least, about the development of the alphabet, but this is the earliest form and how the letters develop. Number 5A down below is the text from Izbit Salta, that was mentioned before, and this dates about 1100 BCE. It's probably one of the earliest linear alphabetic texts. The last line is interesting because it seems to be a series of the letters of the alphabet. Now, if you look at that text, the first question that one asks himself in deciphering a text of this sort is, how is it written? Would anybody guess? Left to right, right to left? What? What would you say? Look at the text. Know what you know. Left to right, right? We would expect in an early Hebrew text or a Canaanite text from right to left. And surprisingly so, this is left to right. How do you know it's left to right? Yeah, but without knowing anything, without knowing anything, before you even decipher the text, you know that because they're all lined up, they're justified on the left side. So that all 5 lines begin on the left side, but they don't end on the right side. So this, and looking at the text for the first time, with unusual letters, and these letters are alphabetic, but they don't look like the letters up above very closely, so that in deciphering this text, one of the things that we see left to right, and then again reflects the early history of the alphabet before it was standardized about 1200 or 1000 BCE. And at that time, you could write alphabetic script from right to left, left to right, or top to bottom. This is Chinese did. So that these are the early examples of writing. We turn now and look at the greater social problem of literacy. And we find that there is literacy in various forms in the ancient Near East. As I mentioned before, Egypt, Mesopotamia were literate societies because we know about them from the great texts that have survived either in clay form or in stone or in Egypt and papyri. And these texts have been deciphered, we know them. But looking at who produced those texts, we find that it was a cadre of a small cadre of professional scribes. These professional scribes learned their trade some 20 years, 30 years they sat in school before they even got a BA in cuneiform or a BA in hieroglyphics. And these people were probably sons of other scribes, because the scribal class, which made up some 2 to 5% of these ancient societies, controlled a great deal of power. You can imagine today, when we think about communications, we think about storage of knowledge, this was in the hands of the scribes. So that if the king wanted to send any message, diplomatic message, or wanted to maintain any sort of count of how many soldiers he had, or where he was going, or knowledge of other countries, he had to turn to his scribes. So that these people had a great deal of power in society, whether it be working for the royalty, whether it be working for temples, whether it be working for the municipalities, whether it be working for rich businessmen. So if they would have a scribe to write up contracts, this fellow controlled all of communications. He controlled all of business relations, commercial business. He controlled history. Because if the king wanted to write down what happened in his time, how he would be remembered, then the fellow who would put it into words, into writing, was the scribe. So he really controlled communication not only on the synchronic level, from one city to another, but on a diachronic level, how the king wanted to be remembered to future generations. So that scribal society, which we know of from these tens of thousands of documents that we have from the ancient Near East, and how we know the structure of their school system, and we know the hierarchy, and we know the relationship and the in-group that was created, this was all part of scribal culture in the ancient Near East. It seems to me, however, that there was another pattern of literacy. I use these anthropological terms. Patterns of literacy. And I must recommend, if you're interested in the topic of literacy in general, John Gooding, Traditional Society. John Gooding is an English anthropologist, and he's written on the topic in many forms, and his works are illuminating. And I've taken them and tried to apply them to ancient Near East, and particularly to ancient Israel. So that what we're looking at are two patterns of literacy. We're looking at a closed, limited literacy of all this documentation that we have from the ancient world, Egypt and Mesopotamia. And then we're looking, also China, by the way, up until the modern period. But also there is another form of literacy, another pattern of literacy, which I call literate society, the creation of a literate society. What's the difference? A literate society is one where there is a potential for literacy among various classes, among the populace in general. Literacy is no longer the monopoly of a small group. And obviously, the invention of the alphabet was a cardinal aspect of the spread of literacy. Because now, if you're dealing with 30 signs, or even 22 signs, then it's much easier to learn how to read and write than if you had to master 600 signs. This is obvious to everybody here who's studying languages and scripts, and if you're studying Spanish, if you're studying any of the Latin scripts, so in Russian, Cyrillic, Ethiopic, you're still dealing with an alphabetic script. The job is much easier. So that what we're looking at is a potential of a literate society. Now, are there any examples of such? It's been argued by Goody and by others, Greek scholars, that classical Greece, 6th century, 5th century BCE, Athens, the Athens of the philosophers, the Athens of the historians, the Athens of the playwrights, all using literary forms and all seemingly writing for a greater audience are part of that new age, are part of literate societies. Well, some have argued against that point. They said it's much more limited there. But be that as it may be limited, because you can find societies today in South America. We're talking about literate societies or alphabetic societies. But in certain communities, literacy is 5%, 6%, 10%. But the potential is there. The potential is great. And that's my point. In other words, a literate society is one where there's a breakdown of that monopoly. And there's evidence of people picking up on an alphabet, learning the alphabet, applying the alphabet, even if it's just a matter of learning how to write one's name or to write a short text. One doesn't have to be a Shakespeare to be part of a literate society. So that in mind brings me back to my fundamental question, which is how can we determine a literate society? Especially if I'm looking, from my point of view, at ancient Israel. Can I find in the biblical society, in the biblical world, indications, proofs, criteria for measuring and determining literacy in that ancient society? Of course, taking a very broad definition, that if you know how to write your name in alphabetic script, you've already gone over the threshold. You're into a new world. You're seeing things differently. You're beginning to alphabetize. You're identifying yourself. You can sign your name, which means that if you put it on a piece of pottery, that if you go down to the well, and people see a bunch of jars there, and you say, this is mine, and you say, how do you know it's yours? Well, my name is on it. And so now, this becomes a part of a new way of seeing the world around you. Well, let's take a closer look. On page 2, which is actually not marked, but you see there measuring literacy in ancient Israel, and you see the Gezer calendar, which is a study text, probably of a child who's experiencing that new aspect of literacy. And he's reading this text. This is a calendar, and this is perhaps a subject of 10th century BC, time of Solomon, and it reflects a sort of formal education. My criteria for determining literacy is based on the two basic sources that we have from the biblical period. Obviously, the Bible itself. Now, of course, you study the Bible, you know the Bible. From a critical point of view, there is difficulty in determining the age of the books of Moses, difference of opinion, critical opinion. There's differences of opinion regarding other books of the Bible, Job and so on, Psalms, the composite from different ages. But there's an overall consensus regarding the books of the prophets, particularly the latter prophets. Isaiah, divided into half, early Isaiah, first Isaiah, second Isaiah. Ezekiel, time of the Exodus, Ezekiel does us a big favor. He even dates many of his prophecies, gives us a good chronological hold on those prophecies, Jeremiah and the 12. And so these are books that are identified with historic characters. They reflect a historic situation. We can date this literature of classical prophecy, of apostolic prophecy, from 750 to 450 BCE. From Amos down to Malachi. So this is the historical framework. Now, I'm looking at it as a historian, saying, well, now I have a basis for looking into biblical society, a historic basis, a textual basis for looking at that society. Now, what is my other basic source? That is Hebrew epigraphy. Hebrew epigraphy is documents that have come down to us through archaeological digs, particularly of the last 50 years, 60 years, going back even 150 years, Moabite stela. In any case, we have documentation. Now, that documentation is sporadic. We've never found an archive from the biblical period. Had we found one, then we could say, wait a second, this is Hezekiah's archive, and we have dated material, like the Elamana tablets or Ugarit or whatever. So that we don't have that, so all of these documents are sporadic. However, because of the nature of the script, and we already have the chart on the first page, we can determine the dates of many of these inscriptions. Now, if these inscriptions were found in situ in an archaeological dig, then we have a way of determining. So we have documents that can tell us 10th century, 8th century, 7th century, 6th century, and so on. So that these are our two main sources. Now, in working with this material, I've attempted to present some 5 criteria that can be used objectively by scholars from all walks, from scholars from all ways of looking at the material, at the biblical material, biblical world. Number 1, my first criterion is the choice of a written word, the substitution of a written word for a sign or for a picture, a symbol or a picture. What do I mean by that? Most of our personal seals that come, Hebrew personal seals that come to us from the biblical period, we have some of 500, 600 seals with names of people. The majority of these seals that have been found and dated to the 8th century, down to the 6th century, we're talking about King Hezekiah, we're talking about Prophet Isaiah, down to Prophet Ezekiel, Jeremiah, down to the destruction of the First Temple in 586. These seals, for the most part, which means 85% of those seals that we have only the names of the seal bearers. In other words, fellow by the name of Nahum ben Haggai. Some of them have some sort of decorative element, some sort of picture, maybe a horse, maybe a boat, maybe a hind, something there, but very few of them. The majority, some 85%, have only words on them, have only written text, the name of the seal bearer. So I say this is significant. In other words, if the seals that people use in their business, in their commerce, in their court system, which they did have, and were asked to sign something, if they used these seals, then obviously they could read their names. And if they couldn't read, then they would draw some sort of picture, but these are very minimal. So what we're looking at from the 8th to the 6th century is the grand corpus of iconographic seals without iconographic means with pictures, and iconic without pictures. Now, we compare these seals to those seals found from the 10th century, from the 9th century. There we find the majority of those seals have pictures on them, sometimes with the man's name, sometimes without it. So we see here a change, a break in the 8th century. if we look at the inscriptions that we find, there are inscriptions that are called monumental inscriptions. Monumental inscriptions, like the Mesha Stela. The Mesha Stela is a document of some 30, 40 lines. Every word is clearly chiseled into the text. There are word dividers. There are no errors in the text. Not only that, but each line is straight, as opposed to graffiti, which is found in caves and burial sites and so on. Now, a monumental text means that the author of the text, because that text was ordered by the king, that text is an official document. That's official history. That's how the king wants to be remembered. And so the composition of the text was made by a scribe. The engraving of the text on stone was made by a professional in the royal employ. So that's a monumental text. But if we find other texts written in caves, on chalk stone, scratched in the name of the person who was buried here, then we're looking at a different type of writing. We're looking at graffiti. We're looking at a vulgar script. So my second criteria would be, look at the script and you can see shades of expertise, of those who were professionals, those who were literati, and those who were just writing the inscription because they felt this was necessary, either on the wall, a prayer, or a word, or the name of the person, some sort of ownership, means of indicating ownership. Just I mentioned before, the pottery at the well, many of those inscriptions were scratched down. But some of those inscriptions were, on the pottery, were inscribed prior to firing the pot, which opens up a new avenue, that there were probably artisans who began to use writing, alphabetic writing, for their professional use, for their marketing aspect. You can imagine a potter who's competing along with the souk, with other potters, now saying to the population coming by, wait a second, I can inscribe your pot with your name on it. In other words, come to me. And what does he do? He writes it, what's your name? Yeshayahu? All right, let me write it down. Wait a second, we've just got the pot now. We've molded it. We're putting it outside, sun dry outside. It's filled. Malleable. Let me write down your name. Yeshayahu. Okay, now I'm going to put it into the furnace. We'll take it out of the furnace, and here you have your own inscribed pot. So, this is, you see, we have pottery that's inscribed after fire, pre-fire, after firing. Could be anybody. Could be the owner, since I just put my name down. Or if it's pre-fire, it's probably the potter himself who's doing that. So what we're looking at, again, at artifacts that come out of the 8th century, 7th century, 6th century, Judea, we're looking at the use of alphabet, the application of alphabet, of writing for other purposes. Ivory inlay was found in Samaria earlier, the 8th century. That ivory inlay, if we look at it, is Phoenician style, so it's probably imported from Tyre. Maybe it's part of the legacy of Jezebel and the context between Israel and the Tyrians. Whatever the case may be, we have luxury items from the Tyrian Empire that are found in Samaria in Israel. Well, you know that from the motifs that are found on those ivories. But if you turn the ivories over on the backside, we're surprised to find that they have letters chiseled into the ivories. Why are there letters? Aleph, Bet, Gimel, and so on down the line. Why are these letters chiseled in? Well, obviously, the product was made in Tyre, imported into Samaria. They needed a joiner to put it together so you could have a nice table with an ivory top on it, or you could have a wall piece, or you could have windows or whatever with ivory, but somebody had to put it all together. And what was the way to do it? Not to form with a picture like a jigsaw puzzle, but look at the back of it and see the letters of the alphabet. So again, marketing an item with the use of the alphabet. So these are three criteria, right? The use of the substitution of a word for a symbol, the ubiquity of a vulgar script, and the use of artisans for writing the alphabetic, for writing or marketing or whatever, for whatever business purposes they had. But I would now look, by the way, all of this material comes from the 8th to the 6th century. So again, it gives us a well-defined, historically well-defined period of time that we're looking at this process, prior to which we don't find the same tendencies in Israel. So we're looking at something that happened sometime in the 8th century. Now again, looking at those prophetic texts. These are literary texts from the same historic period. And this is what I'd like to share with you here. Now, on the 2nd and 3rd pages that you have in front of you, and you're all listed, 1, 2, 3 is missing, is Zechariah, and then down the line. We find, number 1, that the prophets, these are the classical prophets, Amos to Malachi, they're also known as the writing prophets, because they've left us books with their own names and reflecting their own missions. And if we cull this material, we look at this material, we have historically dated texts that reflect on writing and the use of writing. So if you look at Jeremiah 25, 17 to 26, he lists the kings that are coming from the north, and all of whom will be subject to the curse. So I took the cup from the hand of the Lord and gave drink to all the nations to whom the Lord had sent me, and so on down the line. And he lists them at the end. Dedan and Tamar, Buz, and so on, countries and peoples who were well known. And of course then he calls it all the kings of Zimri, which we really don't know. But at the end he says, and last of all the king of Sheshach shall drink. King of Sheshach shall drink. Sheshach in Hebrew, 3 letters. Shin, Shin, and a Kaf. Sheshach. Unknown. Nobody knows. Who is Sheshach? It's not Sheshach. He's a different fellow, 10th century. But who is Sheshach and where's that country? Nobody knows. No such country. So what is the prophet talking about? Well, I'm sure that out there in the audience, in his audience, someone said, wait a second, he's talking code to us. Sheshach, substitution. We're talking about Atvash exercise. What's Atvash exercise? You have to know something about how the ancients learned their alphabet. Basically in school, first lesson, you learn your Aleph, and Bet, and Gimel, and so on down the line. After a month, you're drilling the students, the kids, with the Aleph Bet, according to the order. So they know it by rote. But then you want to introduce a little spin on it. And you say, wait a second, do you know it by rote, or you really know the letters in the alphabet? Let's play a game now. Since there are 22 letters in the alphabet, let's divide them in half. 11 letters here, 11 letters here. You're an Aleph, you're a Bet, you're a Gimel, and so on down the line. You're a Taf, you're a Shin, you're a Reish, Kuf, and so on down the line. Let's switch. And I'll talk to you in Atbash. Atbash is Aleph, Taf, Bet, Shin. Right? So that we learn not only from your A to Z, Aleph to Taf, Alpha, Omega, order, but let's do a spin on that. So we're going to talk now Atbash. That was first graders' knowledge. So what does the prophet say here, Jeremiah? He wants to wake up the crowd. They're standing out there and they're listening to him talk about all these people. And what is he talking about? Right? We don't even know these people. So he sees towards the end of this dialogue to his audience, he said, I see they're going to sleep. So I said, the king Sheshach. He said, what did he say? What did he say? Sheshach? And he said, wait a second. That's Kita Aleph stuff. That's first grader stuff. Sheshach should be now Don't read Shem Shachar, read Babel, Babylon, B-B-L, Babylon, instead of S-S-K, Babylon, in Adbash order. So now people say, wait a second, wow, now, what do I assume from this? I assume that Jeremiah is a good teacher, knows how to work his audience, right, that you will have to know how to do that, but also, he knows and he assumes that out there everybody, or most people, have gone through at least first grade, so that they know this exercise, so you can play with it. And not only that, but if you look in chapter 51, by the way, Jerome already mentions it, and he talks about, in his commentary on Jeremiah, and he also brings forth how one studies Greek in the same way, or Latin, same exercise. In chapter 51 of Jeremiah, thus says the Lord, see, I'm rousing a destructive wind against Babylon. So he's not hiding the fact that he's talking about Babylon. Against Babylon and the inhabitants of Led-Kamai. Again, people say, well, never heard of that place before Babylon. I've heard of Babylon, never heard of Led-Kamai. So, wait a second, he's playing with us again. So what is that, friends? It's a little harder. This is 5 letters in Hebrew and not 3 letters. And so working this one out, you have the term Chaldean in Hebrew. So that again, Jeremiah uses this exercise. I take this now as a historian looking for criteria for literacy. I say when the prophet uses literary method to communicate with his people, he is literate. And the fact that he uses literate methods like the alphabet, like the Adbash system, he knows that out there most people understand him. Similarly, Zechariah was a little bit later. Zechariah is 521 BCE. Zechariah has a prophecy of gifts coming to the Lord, coming to the temple in Jerusalem. And he gets the prophecy, the crowns shall remain, verses 14, the crowns, and then the gifts from God coming in gold and silver, and he has to fashion them. And then in verse 14, the crown shall remain in the temple of the Lord as a memorial to Helem, Tobiah, Idaiah, and so on. A memorial for them. How are you going to remember these people? These Jews from the exile. I can't remember the names. What happened yesterday? How am I going to remember them? And so Zechariah says, you remember them because it's the order of the alphabet. I'll put them in the order of the alphabet. Chem, Tobiah, and Idaiah. Chet, Tet, Yud. 3 letters of the alphabet. So that what we find here, I think, is one of the earliest examples, at least in the Bible, of alphabetizing information. You have a telephone book? How is it organized? How can you control all of those names of people you know? Now I'm talking about the general telephone book, but the telephone book in your house. You organize according to the alphabet. You have a system now of alphabetizing knowledge, of facts. And this is found here. Alright, now, I know that I'm running short of time, so I want to get through with a few other points here. Now, again, how do I know that people are literate? Because the prophets are using literary means, not only first graders, but if you look at number 4, Jeremiah chapter 32, a great prophecy of Jeremiah, who at the time of Jerusalem under siege gets the message that Israel will return to its land. And so when his cousin comes to him and says, where's Jeremiah? He's in jail in Jerusalem. And his cousin Hananiah comes to him and says, you're my cousin in our tribal society, you're supposed to help me out. I'm living outside, my fields and house, everything's gone under, I have no money, I have to sell family property. Now, family property has to be sold to a member of the family. That's behind the book of Ruth. And so Jeremiah purchases that piece of property, and all of this is done in jail with the other Jews that are around there. And the description, beautiful description, let's look at verses 9 and following. So I bought the land in Anatot from my cousin Hananiah. I weighed out the money to him, 17 shekels of silver. I wrote a deed, sealed it, and had it witnessed. In other words, right there in jail. People have to witness the document there. And I weighed out the silver in the balance, and I took the deed of purchase, the scale text, and an open one. There's an open text. In other words, the text is on a scroll. So we know now from documents we've discovered at Dead Sea that there are documents on scrolls that also have an edge to them. And there's an open text indicating what's in that text. According to rule and law, and gave the deed to Baruch, son of Neriah, son of Machseiah, in the presence of my kinsman Hanamel, of the witnesses who were named in the deed. Now you don't see what that deed is here. By the Roman Texer, New Jewish Publication Society translation. It says in Hebrew, HaKotvim, which literally means, I wouldn't go with his translation, not who were named, but who signed in the text. In other words, all those people sitting there, you signed the text, and everybody could sign their own name. We know that from Elephantine and so on. And all the Judeans who were sitting in the text, in the jail, thus said the Lord of hosts, of the God of Israel, take these documents, this deed of purchase, and the scale text, and so on, put them into an earthen jar. Now, this is sort of an orphan text description until the Dead Sea Scrolls were found in jars. And this is how things were preserved. So that they may last a long time, for thus said the Lord of hosts, the God of Israel, how these fields and vineyards shall again be purchased in this land. Something that all of you on your visits to Israel will see fulfilled, the prophecy fulfilled. And so that's Jeremiah, and he's talking about literary method. In other words, the text becomes a medium for the message of salvation, of history. If you look at chapter 37 in Ezekiel, you'll see a similar item with, again, the reference to the audience. The word of the Lord came to me, and you, O mortal, take a stick and write on it of Judah and the Israelites associated with him. And take another stick and write of Joseph, the Yehudah, the Chavedah, the Yosef, the Chavedah. Both of these units that are, Judah is destroyed already at this period. Israel has been destroyed. But Ezekiel says here, he's told, this stick is said, Yehudah. This stick he writes the Yosef. And so bring it together, and look what he says here. And when any of your people ask you, won't you tell us what these actions of yours mean? This is the interface with his audience. And they say to him, we don't understand what you're doing. We don't understand. Answer them, thus said the Lord God, I am going to take the stick of Joseph and put it in the hand of Ephraim and the tribes of Israel associated with him, and I'll place it next to the stick of Judah. And you shall hold both up to the eyes, both the sticks which you have inscribed. Now, again, had Ezekiel known that out there most of the people are illiterate, he could have easily have done, Judah is a lion. That's the symbol of Judah. The bull is the symbol of Joseph. Now, I'm going to draw two pictures, a lion and a bull. And now you get the picture now? I join them together. But the fact that Ezekiel is told, write down, don't draw pictures there. He draws pictures in chapter 1. But in this chapter, in 37, he says, this is Judah, and this is, they understand. He says, well, what does it all mean? So again, writing has become the medium of that message. And it's understood because the prophets are not talking esoteric knowledge. They're talking, they want to get that message. They're the shlichim, they're the apostolic prophets. They want that message to go through. And finally, my last criterion is a critique of writing. If you go through ancient Egyptian texts, you go through ancient Mesopotamian texts, you will find only the glory of writing and scribal career. Every scribe knew how to sing the praises of the scribal art. Nothing was wrong with learning the trade. Everything was wonderful. Now, when you find a text which criticizes scribes or criticizes the misuse of writing, then you know, I think, that you've reached a new period. You've reached a period of literati who are no longer part of the union and can stand aside and criticize those professional writers. So that, for me, is another indication And if you look at Plato, Plato was certainly literate, but he mentions quite clearly in the Laws of the Republic, he mentions quite clearly the limitations, not the critique, but the limitations of writing. If you learn how to write, it's going to affect your memory. You're going to be not using these brain cells anymore. You're going to be dependent upon your palm, right? Your whatever you use to remember things. So there's in Isaiah chapter 10 when he says, "Ha! Those who write out evil writs and compose iniquitous documents, to subvert the cause of the poor, to rob the rights of the needy of my people, that widows may be their spoil and fatherless children their booty." In other words, they're unscrupulous scribes who use written documents and say to the family, "Wait a second, this house doesn't belong to you and your children, this belongs to us, because your husband signed it away." And this poor woman, children, either can't read or don't know the inner aspects of the legal system. So writing has been used to dispossess them. So the prophet comes out against that. Chapter 8, verse 8. "How can you say we are wise, chachamim anachnu, and we possess the instruction of the Lord? Assuredly, for naught has the pen labored, for naught the scribes." Sheker 8 sofrim. The prophet says here again, looking at his contemporary, he being the writing prophet, but not of the scribal class, can now take an independent position and criticize the professional scribes. So this, for me, the aspect of critique, internal critique in society, is an indication that the society has become a literate society. So while, in conclusion, I cannot determine the number of people who are literate, I do feel that I can make a case for the fact that ancient Israelite society from the 8th century, beginning from the 8th century, was indeed a literate society. Thank you very much.